Come on, does anyone remember Windows RT? Now, I definitely remember it vividly, but I don't miss it at all just because it was an underperforming and underpowered platform. It was basically a watered down version of the full Windows experience. So that's why I'm kind of happy that Microsoft has finally changed its ways and ditched the platform altogether. So with its latest Surface tablet, it's making a pretty good impression this time around. Hey guys, John V from PhoneArena here. You're watching our video review of the Microsoft Surface 3. Now before I get into the review here, I just want to say that this is the LTE enabled version that I'm using. They just announced it recently, so you could use it with either AT&T or T-Mobile. There's actually a micro SD card slot in the bottom left corner. But design is typical Surface, nothing really different about it. It's more compact than the Surface Pro 3, but it follows in line to its predecessors. So you have familiar characteristics like the magnesium outer casing. It has a solid construction. You have the angular design here. And of course the kickstand too, which allows us to have a hands-free video watching experience. They've added a third angle here, so you could use it on your lap a lot better. But besides that, it has everything that we liked about the Surface line. Now, it's not necessarily the skinniest or the lightest tablet I've come across, but I'll take the thicker body and also weightiness just because it's a full-blown Windows 10 experience here. And that's what makes the Surface 3 far more versatile than other tablets out there, especially iOS tablets like the iPad Air 2, or even on the Android side like the Samsung Galaxy Tab S2. The beauty about it is that you no longer have Windows RT, so it's not limited in its functionality. You get the full Windows 10 experience out of the box. So this is the same exact platform. The operating system here is the same exact thing you'd find on a traditional laptop, desktop, or even Ultrabook. And the good thing about that is that you can install all your traditional software that you use at home on this tablet. And best of all, you even have access to all the touch optimized apps through the Windows Store. The only downside I find with the Surface 3 is its performance, just the processing side. Now, it's equipped with an Intel Atom chip, a quad-core one with 2 GB of RAM, and that's of course befitting of a tablet of this caliber. Of course, the Surface Pro 3 has a better processor inside of it and more RAM, but this is the compromise you have in this $500 price tablet, and it makes sense for the Surface 3. Now, it's good enough when you're doing one task at a time, like surfing the web's not a problem, but when you begin to start doing some heavy multitasking or just some heavier processes, like let's say you're doing some sort of video editing software, that's when the tablet starts to crawl. Now, it'll accomplish the same task as any other PC out there when it comes to getting stuff done, but it just takes a longer time. For example, when I'm rendering a video using the video editing software that I use here, it just takes longer for it to do that than, say, my Ultrabook. It shares the same 3:2 screen aspect ratio as the display on the Surface Pro 3, but it's a smaller size and a lower resolution. So it's a 10.8-inch 1080p LCD panel. Now, it's not really strong in the details, but just as long as you're looking at it from a good amount of distance, it's usable enough. It's only when you look at it very closely that you do notice that it's not quite as sharp or detailed compared to some other screens out there. The other thing is its brightness output. Now, when you're in dim conditions, it's not bad, it's good enough, but it's only when you use it outdoors where there's a lot of sunlight, it becomes problematic. So it reaches a luminance of 359 nits, which is short compared to some of the other tablets out there. But it has some really nice qualities to it. For example, you have a 6300 Kelvin color temperature, so it has almost a neutral tone. It favors a little bit more on the warmer side, so whites tend to come out just a smidgen more yellowish in tone, but it's still really close to that reference value of 6500 Kelvin. And you also have a gamma value of 2.17, so those two things indicate that you have a high quality display here. On top of that, it's perfectly calibrated. It manages to reproduce all the colors in the sRGB color spectrum chart pretty accurately. Some other things worth mentioning about the Surface 3 here is that you have a full-size USB 3.0 port, so you have some versatility in that. It starts with 64 gigabytes of internal storage, but there is a micro SD card slot, so at least you have expansion. You have a mini display port if you want to use that, and it uses a standard micro USB port for charging. So they changed that with this over previous models just because it used that magnetic connection. It has a 3.5 megapixel front-facing camera, decent enough for selfies, not the greatest quality, of course. In the back, you have an 8 megapixel autofocus camera. Now, it's pretty disappointing because the quality and even the camera experience are just underwhelming. They don't really do a whole lot. When you look at the camera app, it's bare bones as they come. So basically, you just have the viewfinder and you have your shutter keys on the right side. As far as options, you don't have anything except for setting a timer and also adjusting some of the settings like the aspect ratio, and that is it. No shooting modes whatsoever. As far as the quality, it's okay. It's mediocre at best, just as long as you have plenty of lighting. Details are kind of smudgy sometimes, and there's a lot more color saturation with the images. Under low light, you could forget about it. It's just a lot of digital noise, too grainy, and underexposed to even make it usable. And the colors tend to be a lot more washed out. So at times it looks like a black and white image. As far as the 1080p video recording quality, it's the same thing. It's mediocre as long as you have good lighting. Under low lighting conditions, forget about it. The biggest thing I found was that the focus adjustment was just a little bit on the slow side. Now, Microsoft doesn't specify the battery size that's inside of the Surface 3, but they do mention that it's able to achieve up to 10 hours of battery life with it. Now, in our everyday normal real-world usage, it's more like between the 6 to 8 hour range, which isn't bad, especially for a tablet running full Windows 10, a full desktop OS. But in our battery benchmark test, it only pulled in 5 hours and 45 minutes, which is kind of disappointing because other tablets like the iPad Air 2 pulls out over 7 hours. And on top of that, it just takes an extremely long time for it to charge with the micro USB connection. In fact, it takes 260 minutes for it to get back to 100%. The best thing about the Surface 3 is that you get the power of a laptop in a tablet form factor, and that easily eclipses some of the functionality you get from other tablets like the iPad or some of the Android tablets out there. We'll gladly take the larger size, slightly heavier weight for this package here. In terms of pricing, it starts at $500 for the base 64GB model with 2GB of RAM. For $100 more, you get 128 gigabytes of memory and 4 gigabytes of RAM. If you want constant LTE connectivity, the LTE models sell for $100 more than their Wi-Fi counterparts. But it doesn't end there, because if you want to give it that laptop-like feel, you could pick up the Type keyboard, which is $130. This is the same from before. Chiclet style keys, a little bit on the cramped side, but it offers good tactility and travel, so it offers a more natural typing experience. That's if you don't want to use the touch on-screen keyboards. But on top of that, you could also pick up the pen here, the Surface Pen, which allows you to interact with the tablet. It's pressure sensitive, you could jot down notes and whatnot, but this incurs a $50 cost. When you add that to the $130 cost of the Type keyboard and the base $500 cost of the Surface 3 tablet, it does get a little bit pricey, but those are all options for you. By itself, the $500 is not bad. Same price as some of the other notable tablets out there, but the best thing about it is that you get the full Windows 10 treatment. So it is a powerhouse, and you get a lot of work done on the road with it.